Doctors of Reddit, what are the dead giveaway signs that someone is faking? Brief note for all the student doctors out there. People can pass stroke field tests and still point be having a stroke. I could do everything on the list while I had a clot in my brain, verified by court and MRI, except I couldn't stop vomiting. Good times. Be aware sometimes shit doesn't look like you think it should. Obligatory, not a doctor, but I got a call from my son's school nurse when he was in 2nd grade, and the conversation went like this. Nurse, sounding upbeat and cheerful, says, "Your son wants to tell you his terrible news." Son gets on the phone, says, "Hi mom, I cut my finger off." I ask him, "Where is your finger now?" "Son, I put it back on." I said, "Can I talk to the nurse?" Nurse gets on the phone again, says, "Sounds serious, right?" I asked, "Does he have a substitute teacher today?" Yes. I told the nurse to let him know I will take him to the hospital for a shot for his finger, to which he says, "I think it's okay. I glued it on really good." Nurse kept him in the office for a bit to talk about scary changes in the classroom. I went to emergency once with intense chest pain. The young, new doctor I saw first listened to my chest and immediately concluded I had pericarditis, but the supervising doctor decided I was faking it for drugs for some reason. The next morning I woke up to a psychologist in my room asking all sorts of random shit when an orderly interrupted because the ultrasound guy was in and wanted to see me first thing, I think after talking to the first doc I saw. Turns out I had pericarditis and myocarditis, and the dude wheeled me out himself and told them order an ambulance to take me to a hospital with a cardiac clinic. I don't yet know why anyone would want to fake anything medical, unconsciousness in particular. I got a compound fracture recently and called 911 on myself and was put on hold. Fun stuff, but got through and asked them to send help. Operator was a badass and kept asking me questions to keep me conscious. The ambulance folks arrive, casually got out of the ambulance, walk up to me, and then saw the bone sticking out of my body and said, quote, "You rock. You're actually hurt. Yes. Did you think I called 911 because I spilled some lemonade?" Then it occurred to me that most of their calls must be horseshit. But to cause me even more confusion, I received close to a $2,000 bill for the privilege of actual help and the ride to the hospital. That ludicrous bill is no fault of the M's. I'm very much appreciative of their existence and they don't yet get nearly enough credit, but the best part of receiving that bill, the ambulance ride, was roughly $1,850. The fentanyl they gave me was $2.15. My sister is a pediatric audiologist and this is my favorite story of hers. Apparently, sometime in elementary school, usually the early grades, a ton of kids like to fake hearing loss. Like not just your I can yet hear the teacher you're full on, want to get hearing aids, etc. Anyway, she explained to me that, based on the way she plays the tones, you can usually tell if someone is faking. Especially when they just pretend they can yet hear anything. But it is not 100%, obviously, because hearing loss patterns can be really weird. However, she has caught a number of kids simply by saying, "You're okay, so I'm going to play a random number of tones and they'll go in both ears. I want you to say your eyes ear if you hear it, and your no ear if you don't yet point ear." One time I was in hospital with decompression sickness and neurological damage and I couldn't piss. I told a nurse I needed a catheter, which she did right away, and I filled 3-liter bags straight off. Anyway, she commented that, if a man actually says he needs a long tube pushed up the hole in his penis, then you can be sure he needs it done. The inverse of this question. What can someone do if they are not faking it, but for whatever reason they have multiple doctors insist they're faking it? But by never telling the patient they're faking it, nothing is ever resolved, and it drags on for months and months. Whenever the symptoms aren't there, when the patient doesn't know they're being watched. I had someone fake a stroke recently and walked in on her walking around her room independently after pretending to be limp on her left side, letting us take complete care of her and wiping her butt for her. It was wild, y'all. My favorite thing about this thread is that half of the here's how you know you're faking. Your comments get responses that are all eerie about that. Let me tell you how that assumption fucked me over and I almost died. Year. I'm in the middle of being treated like I'm faking and it's really frustrating. I had a tool slip at work and hit me in the eye and forehead. Knocked me out for a second and I lost sight in my eye. An hour later I started getting my sight back, but it hasn't fully come back. It's been months now. Two things I got diagnosed with were ocular migraines and vitreous detachment and a concussion. But none of those things explain why my vision is still blurry in my right eye, except the VD which causes floaters, but my issue is blurry vision, like I have Vaseline in my eye. But doctors keep telling me I'm fine, that I need to go back to work. One doctor told me to think about the economy and that I was lucky to have a job right now, so I quit my job. I still want to see out of my right eye, but none of the doctors are taking me seriously. When I had a stroke 10 months ago, my biggest fear was I was somehow faking it and the ambulance ride was a sham, and why was I doing it? No, it turns out I was having a stroke. I was so worried I was being a faker, although I have never done that before. Just a really odd mental state. I have the reverse. My back went out, extreme sciatica pain, like being struck by lightning constantly. Couldn't move for days. When someone found me 3 days later they called 911. Just for the doctor to tell me I was faking it for pain meds. While I was crying in pain I asked him why I'd lay in a pile of my own piss and shit for 3 days for some Vicodin when I literally own a bar. Fucking insane. Edit. Thank each and every one of you for sharing your stories. As much as I hate hearing them, at least we aren't alone, and we know what each other are going through at some level. Actually, I feel much less alone in the world right now, because I've never met someone in my situation before. But they are obviously out there. If someone is truly unconscious, their thumb always wiggle. Just say that out loud to yourself. Once my doctor accused me of faking to get out of school. I went in with serious stomach issues, and for some reason he decided to tickle me, which instinctually made me fidget and smile. To him that meant I was faking it, and he sent me away without checking my actual problem. I was grounded, and 15 years later, I still have those stomach issues. Fuck you, Dr. Goody. I had a 360 testicular torsion and a doc thought I just had some inflamed glands due to my reactions. Luckily I came back after they sent me home, or I would have lost my ball. Edit. My highest voted comment by far is about my ball doing an unwanted pirouette. Never change Reddit. Not a doctor but a paramedic. Tons of calls to the jail for inmates with seizures. I'll lift the arm over their face and let it go. They'll move it to prevent hitting their face, or will likely brush their eyelashes and they'll twitch to it. I just want to point out that there are many types of seizures, and there's a bit of a stigma surrounding people having them. Some people have focal aware seizures and will be able to respond and control their limbs during the episode. It's dangerous to assume that someone is faking just because they aren't experiencing a seizure, like how you expect seizures to look. You can be faking good too. Had a tooth kicked out, mouth filled with blood and swelling. I'd stuck a tissue in to try to stop the blood. I've presented to the Tridge at the dental hospital. I'm dribbling blood as I talk. She asks me if it hurts, and I said a little bit. She looked at me dead in the eye and said one of the many things we Tridge on is pain. Gotcha. Good nurse. Hurts like a motherfucker. I've literally been kicked in the face. Thanks for that. Notes taken. Was patched up and out of there within an hour. Edit. RIP in barks. Lol. And thanks for the awards. close bracket. Whom reading through this and hoping my doctor does not think crazy. Who've been recovering from long haul COVID and it makes it seem like I want meds, but in reality I just want answers. Honestly, my wife just needs to show up at emergency and for some reason they always assume she is faking. A nurse tried to discharge her when she had an ectopic pregnancy, saying it was the stomach flu. 4 hours later she was in emergency surgery. She has hyperthyroidism, but nearly all male doctors don't believe it's a real condition, so keep trying to take her off her meds or reducing them. Apparently this is somewhat of a common issue. She recently fell in the stairs and fucked her leg up. It took 4 R&D visits before they raid her leg despite the swelling and bruising. She was sent home from hospital when we first got together and had blood poisoning, collapsed on the tube on the way home, and straight in an ambulance for another 3-day stay in hospital. It's a nightmare to watch, as it's almost guaranteed at this point they will not take her seriously. Nurse here, I had a teenager overdose on Zoloft and start having strange seizure-like episodes. What made them particularly strange is that they all followed a predictable pattern of onset. First, he would lower the bed, next he would turn the TV volume down, and finally he would check to see if I was nearby. There was pretty severe thrashing about without any abnormalities in breathing, heart rate, pupils, and he was still able to communicate with me throughout the entire episode. Unsurprisingly, EEG also failed to show any abnormalities,